Hey everyone, and welcome. We'll give everyone a few more minutes to join. We just had one question submitted during registration. Very simple one. Will there be a video? All of our webinars are recorded, and we do post them all to YouTube. So we have a webinar playlist there, which I can share as a link. There you go. So that'll direct you to right to the playlist that shows all of our webinars. Of course, on our YouTube, we also have tons of other videos, so feel free to check it out. In particular, today's webinar does have one really complicated formula. So knowing where that webinar playlist is would be very handy, so you can go back and reference how we walked through the formula. And then while we give everyone a couple more minutes, just wanted to show you a little sneak peek of something we've been working on. Should be coming out soon, maybe 2 weeks, but it's our calendar. So right now you can actually access a version of it in Grist as a custom widget, but I just wanted to give you a little sneak peek. So feel free to check it out and play around with it. So I already have a table that contains a bunch of activities and dates, and so my calendar is already populated. There's only 4 things you need for the widget. You need a start date or date time, an end date or date time for the, let's say, activity, a title for the event. Mine is just a column that says activity. And then you also have the option to have a toggle column to mark if the event is all day. Like you see up here, I have some hotels. So for those, I marked all day, and so they appear at the top. But what's really cool with this is when you click on an event in the calendar, you can have a linked card widget that updates. So I can click this chocolate farm tour event. I can see all the details for that event. You can create a new event just by double clicking. And then when you click on the event, you can come here and populate new details. And it'll update here. Another cool thing you can do is drag and drop from the bottom to pick the end time. And then if you need to change the start time, but the duration of the event should stay the same, you can drag and drop, and it will update here in your card view. So you'll see that I dragged to 10:30 a.m. start. My start time has updated to that. So pretty cool. So that's coming. Keep an eye out. If you did want to play around with it right now, you can just go to add new, add a widget. It would be under custom. And then, oops, I'm just going to add a new page so it's nice and large. Pick the data table where your event information is. And then under the custom URL, you would just find calendar. So feel free to check that out. Just really cool. Okay. So now gave everyone some time. We'll go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. I'm Natalie. Welcome to our September webinar. Last month, we deconstructed the class enrollment table or template, which covers common structural patterns, references, and dynamic dashboards. So you can find a recording of that webinar along with all of our previous webinars on YouTube. Again, we shared that link directly to the webinar playlist. You'll find a recording of this webinar in the near future. Because you're registered, you'll get an email when that happens. So today we are going to deconstruct the payroll template. Let me share a link to the template. So if you want to check out the template later, now you've got the link. We're going to cover importing from Google Sheets. We'll learn how to write some formulas and create some dashboards so we can get the most out of our data. So let's just take a look at the payroll template, get an overview of what the end result is going to look like. Just to start, we're just going to start in raw data, since that'll show all of our tables, whether they're on a page or not. So we have, looks like 3 main tables. We've got a payroll table, a people table, and a rates table. Down here we do have 3 summary tables, but these are based on the payroll table. So it looks like data-wise, just 3 tables. So looking at the pages, we can see how different things are linked. The payroll table here, or payroll page, is straightforward. It is just a view of the payroll table. Each person's payment is calculated for the pay period based on their pay rate. Here we go, per hour, and then the number of hours. What's really neat about this template is that it takes into account different pay rates for the same person over time. So the historical pay data is unaffected by new rates. So we can actually look at the rates table. We'll just jump down there for now. And we can see that some people have multiple rates. So Randy here has multiple rates. 2 for teaching assistant, 1 that started in January, and then it looks like he got a raise in April. And then he has, excuse me, a rate for instructor. And so our per hour column here is a formula column that looks at all those different rates. It finds all the rates for this person for the particular role. And then it finds the appropriate pay rate based on the state. And so we're going to walk through this formula later, step by step. It is a large chunk of our webinar going through this formula, and that's why I say save that webinar playlist link so you can always reference it in the future if you need to write a formula somewhere. Then we have the pay periods page. And so these are our summary tables. We can see how much was paid out per pay period, but then we can also see a breakdown of that pay by role and by person. I select a pay period and the other 2 update. Finally, we have our people page. This is just a table with information about each person with a linked card. And then we can see this person's rates all in a single page. So let's build this out from the beginning. So from the home page, we're just going to create a new document. And then think through the different tables and views that we want to create and just write down our list of requirements. So first off, we know we have several tables of data, and we're going to import these from Google Sheets. And then once we have our data imported, we'll want to modify column types and see if there's any places we can add formulas for easy data entry and easy calculations. Now, when we import, Grist will automatically guess text versus numeric and date columns, but there's other column types available and different formatting options. We'll take a look at those. And then we have two dashboards to set up. The first is the pay periods dashboard, which shows how much was paid out each pay period, and then a breakdown by role and person. And then finally, our second dashboard, which is the people dashboard, just shows contact information and then the rates for each person. And we'll just come through and add a toggle column just so we can check things off as we complete them. Okay, so our data is stored in Google Sheets. Take a quick look at what that looks like. We just have our people table, contains information about them. Our rates table where you can track the history of their rate changes for their roles. And then the actual payroll. So jumping back here in Grist, we can start importing our data. Under Add New, we can import from Google Drive. Now each sheet in my document will have a tab here, and we can choose what to do with each of them individually. We can import into a new table. We can skip importing one of the sheets. We can also import into an existing table and just map columns. Oh, we just want to import into new tables for each of them. There we go. And so all of our data is now in Grist. We can check that one off. Next, we just need to review our tables, update any column types, and add some formulas. So the people table is pretty straightforward. We don't have much to change here. The only thing is that in this full name column, we see that some data is repeated. And so if you're in here entering names, you would have to type first and last name, but then you would have to do it again in the full name column, which we don't want. We want to make our jobs easy. And so what we can do here is use a formula to create the full name value. So to start entering a formula, just click the equal key, and we're going to convert the column to a formula column. And here, you do have the option to use the AI assistant, and you can just tell it what you want, and it'll create the formula for you. But we'll walk through how to create the formula. So we want to do, it looks like last name, comma, space, first name. So we can just click a column to enter that value. Now, first and last name, these are strings. And so when we combine strings in a formula, you still use the plus to add together strings. But if I was to just do last name plus first name, there would be nothing separating them. It would just be, I can show what that looks like. Just slams them together. But we want something that separates them. So we'll add another string to show. And because it's a string, you always use quotes. And we'll separate with a comma and a space. And there we go. So now, if I'm entering my name, the full name populates automatically. And so it just saves us a little bit of work. Moving on to the rates table. Here in the person column, we have some data repeated. Now, if you've been in our other webinars, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. I've talked about the drive principle. When setting up your data, you should always follow this drive principle, meaning don't repeat yourself. When you see text repeated over and over like this, there's always a better way of entering that data. So in that people table, we saw that first name and last name was repeated within the full name column. And so we used a formula to just have it complete that itself, which eliminates some spelling errors. And we can do that here, something similar here as well. So here, each person's name is repeated within the column, but it's also repeated from the people table. And because it's in the people table, we can just reference that data. In the creator panel here, I'm going to change the column type for person to a reference column. Now, automatically, it's going to suggest linking it to the people table and showing the full name column because all the values match values from that column. And that's exactly what we want. So we'll go ahead and apply. And so now each rate is linked to a specific person. Now the rate start column, it automatically guesses a date column. With date columns, you can also change the format. So you can select something different there if you'd like. Now the row column here, we see that several values are repeated. Here, the values are repeated within the column. And when you have a column that has a specific set of values to choose from, like in this case, a specific set of roles to choose from, you can use a choice type column. So we can change this to choice. And when we convert to choice, Grist is automatically going to populate the list of choices with the existing values in the column. And that just makes it really easy when setting up these column types to do it after you import your data. Less typing. Now, if you wanted to add new values, just click Edit, type in your new value, and you can just add as many as you need. You can also delete stuff. You can also color code. So if you click this little box with the T, you can select a fill color, a text color. You can also bold, underline, italicize, strike through. And you can do that for all of them or none of them, whichever you prefer. I always like some extra color in my choices. It makes the document a little more fun. Just be sure to save your changes. And now it's fine, color coded. When I double click, I do have a drop down that shows the different values. And then if you are typing, it will auto populate as well, or autofill as you type. Now this next column, hourly rate, it is numeric. The only thing here is we can change it to a currency amount by clicking the button there. Now in this drop down, you can select a different currency from the list. My default is US dollars. And if you want to update the default currency of your document, you can do that in document settings. So in the bottom left here of the navigation panel on the left, click settings. You can change your default time zone. You can change your default currency for the document. Okay, so that's it for the rates table. That just brings us to our payroll table. Now, a lot of these columns are going to be similar. Date and end date, these are date columns. We can change the format. Person, again, just like before, this data is duplicated from a people table, so we can reference it. Now, since our payroll data and our rates data is all linked to specific people, we have a single source of information for these different people. Like, let's say I wanted to change Ivan's last name. I can come to the people table, update his last name to Smith, and we can see here in the rates table, it's been updated. In the payroll table, it's been updated. And so it just makes it a lot easier if you have updates to name, updates to whatever. Maybe there was a spelling error. You just have to update it in a single place, and it's going to update everywhere else because all of your data is linked. So then the next column, we have that row column again. Just like before, it is going to be a choice column. Now, if you had a bunch of choices here and you wanted to color code them to match like before, that could be a lot of work. We can just jump back to the rates table. We can copy this list, so you can do the keyboard shortcut, Control A, selects all, Control C, copies, and we can just jump back, Control V to paste, and save it, and now it's color coded without having to redo all that work. Before, it's not such a big deal, but if you had a bunch of choice values, then it could take a lot of time to do that, but just copy paste. And then the other thing I just wanted to point out here is like using a choice column versus this reference value. With the reference, we're referencing an entire record. And so like we might just see a person's name here, but now we have, it links to all of this information about the person. So if you needed that link, we'll kind of see how that works better later. But it references an entire record, where here the role is just a role. There's nothing else that goes along with it. And so we can just use a choice column. Hours here, correctly guessed is numeric. Only thing is we have this weird decimal. We don't need that many decimal points. We can just change the max decimals to 2. You can always set it to whatever you'd like with these buttons here. Per hour, that is a currency value. But here, we can also use a formula to pull the value from the rates table. So in the rates table, remember, different people have different rates for different roles, and they may have gotten a raise. In the payroll table, we want to pull the current rate that they should be paid. And if there's a new rate that comes along, their historical data should not change. So it's a very, I don't want to say it's a very complicated formula. It is more advanced than what we would normally cover in a webinar. Don't let it discourage you. We'll go through it step by step to break it down. I'm going to add the rates table to this page just so we can kind of see where I'm getting different information. And we'll walk through this step by step. Okay, so to enter a formula again, click the equal key. And we'll do this in little steps. So first, we need to get all the rates in this table for the person and role located in this row of the payroll table. And to do that, we can use a lookup records function. It looks up records, multiple, in another table. So specifically, we need to tell it what table to look up information in. We want information from this rates table. We'll do rates.lookup records. Again, this webinar is recorded, so you don't have to memorize this. Just know to come back to this webinar if you need to write a formula like this, or just understand this one. So we want the value in the person column here to match the value in the person column here. So person equals person. There's a chance that your column headers won't match perfectly. Here they do. This one, this column header, is pulling from the rates table. And then we're matching it to a specific column in this table, which is this person column. And then the other thing we want to match is the value in the role column here to the value in the role column here. So again, this first role, you're listing the column from the rates table, and then you're matching it to the name of the column in the table with the formula. And we're going to do this in chunks so you can see what each part of the formula looks like. So here, it now returns a list of records. So for Lucy Francis, we see 2 records, the record ID 4 and record ID 5 from the rates table. If we look, Lucy Francis has 2 records for coordinator. So far we're off to a good start. Lily Ward has 3 for coordinator, 3 for coordinator. So we're pulling the right information. Now again, just remember that this is a list of records that we're getting with this portion of the formula. And we're just going to assign this to a variable rates so we can use it in the next portion of the formula. Okay, so the next step of our list of records, we want to find those records where the rate start date in this column here is on or before this row's date. So when you're entering a date into payroll, let's say they're getting a raise in the future. This makes more sense with historical data, but let's say they're getting a raise in 2 weeks. You don't want that raise to affect the current payroll. So we only want those rates whose rate start date is before the payroll, on or before this payroll's date. So this portion of the formula is a little more confusing. So remember in the last portion here, we can see the response. We get a record ID, and that represents the record. And we have a list of these. So R is going to represent each of the records in our rates list. So give me the record for a record in rates if the record's rate start value is less than or equal to the value in the date column. Okay, so again, this just represents one of these records if it was returned in the rates function up here. And now we only want that record if its value for rate start is on or before this date. We don't want future raises. We just want their historical data. And so now it's going to update to only show those that start on or before, which really limits it. Most of these only have one at this point. Lucy Francis has two. So just looking at it, coordinator, this date is April 1st. And we see that both of these start dates are prior to April 1st, 2020. And so that's why she has two listed. So we must continue on with our formula. Again, just doing this step by step also helps you find errors as you go. So next, of those past rate start dates, we want to find the most recent, the current one. Before we do that, I do need to assign our last function to a variable. So that's our past rates. And then we can use that more easily in this next function. Okay, so we want the max in past rates. Now this next portion, we're doing key equals lambda r. Key is a lambda function that will tell max which objects in the iterable are larger than others. So we're going to look specifically at the record's start date. So for R dot start date, we're looking at the start date for each of those records in past rates. We want the maximum start date in these past rates. So that'll be the most current. And so now we get it down to one record. So these are all returning the single record that has the current rate start date for the specific payroll. And I will assign that to the variable current rate. And then finally, our last step, since we've got it down to a single record, all we need to do is return the value in this hourly rate column for that record. And so we just use dot notation to do that. So return the single record from current rate. We want to return its hourly rate. And so now we do get the appropriate pay based on the date. So again, that's a rather complicated formula. So if you're trying to use a similar formula in your own document, just remember to reference back to this webinar. But at the same time, if you're getting stuck, feel free to ask in our community. That's what it is for. Just when you're asking help with formulas, be sure to post screenshots so we can get an idea of how your data is laid out. Like here, it was helpful to see this rates table and the column headers and the different information. So then when I was filling out the formula, I could get that information and also compare it. If you do have sensitive data, feel free to just create a copy of your document that just says dummy data, and you can share that with us. let me share a link to the community forum. There you go. So again, that's probably the most complicated formula we may have covered in a webinar, but don't let it discourage you. You get to do really cool things in Grist with these more complicated formulas. So feel free to ask for help in our community. So then finally, we have our payment column, which this formula is pretty straightforward. All you do is hours times rate. Oops. Clicked 2 in a row. We don't want that. Okay. Hours times their rate to get the payment. Now, on some of these, you're going to get a bunch of decimals. We just want 2 because we can just round this function to 2 decimal places. And then we will change the column type to a currency value. And so now we've got their per hour pulling from the rates table. And then if you get a raise, your historical payroll information is unaffected. And then we can calculate the payment based on that. So with that, we have gone through our tables, we set up our column types and our formulas. And next, we just need to create our dashboards. So now that we have that done, let's see, the first dashboard is our pay periods dashboard. We want to know the total payment that was made in a pay period. And we would also like to know the breakdown of payments by role in that pay period, as well as by person. So in order to group by a pay period, we do need to create, delete that, there we go, a column in our payroll table that specifies which pay period we are in. Right now we have a date. For a pay period, we just want the month and the year. So we can add a new formula column. Pay period, again, click equals key to enter a formula. And it's going to be based on our date. So we can select date and then call the function that we want to use. And for this one, we're going to call strf time, which allows us to take a date or date time value and put it into a format that we want. And so there's this handy cheat sheet that shows you all of the different codes that are available. And specifically, we just want the year, which if we want a 4-digit year, the code is %, capital Y, and then the month is %, lowercase m. I will share a link to this cheat sheet just so you have it. If you've been in our other webinars, you've seen us use this function a lot. We love it. So because strf time is a string function, we do need to put our codes into a string, so hence the quotes here. So I want the 4-digit year, and then to separate my month and year, I want a dash, and then I want the 2-digit month. Enter. And so I have a pay period column. And now we'll want to create a summary table of our payroll table grouped by this column. So any column that shares 01-2020, it's all going to get summarized into a single record. And so to create a summary table, add new, we're going to create a new page. Click the summation icon, and that's what creates a summary table. And then we're going to group by this new pay period column. And so now we see that there were 14 records within the January 2020 pay period. It does summarize all numerical columns. And so hours and per hour, it's not really helpful. We can hide those. And then we can see the total payments. I don't really care about the number of records. We're going to hide that. And so now we can quickly see the sum of our payments in each pay period. Next, we wanted to know how much was paid out for each role. And so we're going to do the same thing. Add new widget, summary of the payroll table. grouped by pay period, but this time we're also going to group by the role. And then because we have a table that's grouped by pay period already on the page, we can use that as our selector. I'm going to hide some of these columns. And so now when I select a pay period, my role table is actually updating to show me the different values. This gives me the information that I want, but it's not the best visually. We can just update this. Under the table tab, if you have a widget on your page and you just want to change it, just click change widget. And we're going to change it to a chart. And then we're going to change it to a pie chart. And there we go. A better visual of how the payments went out to each role. I can select my pay period, it updates. I can hover over it to see the numerical value. And then finally, we wanted to know how much was paid out for each person in a pay period. So once again, add a widget to the page, summary by pay period, but this time also by person. And we can link it again. And so now I can see in the pay period, I'll hide some of these columns. We can see how many hours someone worked in the pay period. We can see what they were paid in the pay period. And so now we have a really nice dashboard and see all of this information at a glance. And then last but not least, let's just name our dashboard. Excellent, we can check that one off. And then last but not least, we have our people dashboard. Now with this one, we just wanted contact information and then to see a person's rates. We can just build this on our existing people page. So we've already got all of their contact information, but we're going to just add a card widget, cleans up the view a bit. It's a card of the people table, and we'll select by the existing people table. So now when I select a person, the card shows me their contact information. So I don't really need all this extra stuff that's in the table. We can clean up that view. So here under the table tab of the creator panel, I can quickly hide a bunch of columns, select all, just deselect the ones you don't want to hide, and then hide the rest. And then we could edit our card layout. And so now contact information ready to go. The only other thing we wanted here was a person's rates. And so we're going to add a view of the rates table. The rates table has a reference column that points to the people table. And because of that reference column, we can link to the people table. So when I select, I'm just moving these around to make it easier to see. When we select a person in the table, the rates table updates to only show rates for the selected person. Now, because we know who it is already selected, we could just hide that column. And then if you want to go a step further, you can apply some sorts here. To me, I would want to see all of the rates for the same role together. So we'll just sort the role column A to Z. But then on top of that, I would want to see the most recent rate first. So I would want to see this teaching assistant rate before all of the historical data. So we'll add to the sort. And we'll sort rate start Z to A. And save. And so you can stack sorts to do cool things like that. But that is our payroll template. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I know it's a lot. Again, that formula is a lot. So feel free to save the link to the webinar YouTube channel playlist, and then you can reference it. And again, the community is a great place to get help with formulas. Just scrolling back to some of the comments about the calendar. There was, did I close it? I think I closed it. You can do a day view if that is helpful. Let me jump back to where I actually have some data. So here you can switch to a day view and it'll have a better look at your events for the day. There's also a week view, which is what I had it on, and then the month view as well. So there are different views for the calendar. And if anyone missed that before, it's a new feature that's coming out. But if you did want to play with it, it is in Grist as a custom widget. You would just add a new custom widget, select where your data for your events is contained, and then to set up the custom widget under custom here, be in this custom tab, and then the drop down calendar. So then you would set up your columns. But again, there is a day, month, and week view. No, you cannot change the color in the calendar. I don't know. That's on the roadmap. It was something I requested too. But keep an eye out for an email when this is launched. But again, you can play with it if you want. It's under custom. So any questions? Awesome. Thanks. Bye, everyone.